Hey guys, thanks for joining us. And this is our next episode and first experience on Facebook Live at the same time. But we're going to talk about reasons we experience binges, and what better of a guest to have on the podcast today than Dr. Kori Propst, who is a mental health therapist and our mental health specialist at the Diet Doc. And I love having you on these because there's no one else better than to dig deep with a medical professional with this.
Thank you, Adam. I appreciate it. I love our discussions too, because, you know, we both have so much experience in this area. You're in the trenches with clients all the time, just like I am. And, you know, it's one thing to say we know the research. It's a whole other to be working one-on-one with individuals who are struggling with this stuff. So I'm excited for the chat.
Yes, absolutely. Me as well.
Yeah. So I want to ask you, Adam, you know, as you think about what your clients are maybe even currently experiencing right now with everything kind of going on in the world, shows being canceled, you know, competition plans and goals shifting and changing, are you seeing an increase in binge eating? What does it look like for you?
It hasn't been as bad. I think I have a really exceptional, mentally tough crowd right now. I really do. Now, I will say I've seen tidbits of it where my show was canceled and I did decide to have ice cream. And then you just kind of wonder, is this going to perpetuate and we're going to see it on a weekly basis? And they seem to be squashing it really, really well, which is awesome. So yeah, I think part of that came from my clients, just like I just found out about the show getting canceled Friday. I'm not going to bother Adam to see if I can have a cheat meal. And I think they know that I'm relatively flexible. And if your show got moved 7, 8 to 10 weeks back, we have quite a bit of time. And as you know, a lot of my clients are ready early. So that makes a big difference as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's interesting because I think that if we're serious about being an athlete and participating in our sport, then ideally, I say this, ideally, we are not just training our bodies, right?
Yes.
But we are very, very focused on training our minds as well in skills like quick recovery and resilience, and we're using different things like visualization and, you know, stopping the thoughts as we're navigating different pressures that we know are not, they're not the thoughts that are not congruent with us being in that optimal zone that we need to be in to prepare.
Right.
You know, I don't look at your athletes that maybe have this momentary lapse in judgment as not being resilient or not having the skills or the capacities to, you know, weather the adversity. I think all of us are going to be impacted. All of us do in some way have some struggle. It's what do we do with it? Can we notice it quickly? And how are we going to respond to it? And the same thing really applies with, you know, how are we noticing the urges to binge? What do they look like? What do they feel like? What are the thoughts that go through our heads that have the potential to, you know, kind of pick up speed and steam and momentum that could lead to us engaging in a behavior that we're really going to be sorry about and regretful for? How do we see it early and then, you know, make the changes necessary?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, you need to identify when these symptoms are coming. And when you're talking about this, I start thinking justification. And I really think that your mind will talk you into doing this. And I think you really need to set the mood for yourself. aside from just thinking, you need to put yourself in a not stressful environment. And I think of all my mothers right now who have a kid tugging on their shirt all the time while they're hungry, while they're trying to process these feelings, and how much of those feelings get suppressed and ignored. And we just follow what feels natural, which is to eat and to survive and thrive. And because we're specifically really talking often about contest dieting right here. So there really is not a whole lot of room for error when you're trying to be your absolute best. And to put yourself in a even more state of an isolation than right now, I think is really important, and setting a mood. Your surroundings affect your mood. Maybe put on your favorite song and then think through it. Put yourself in a positive mindset. And if you're in a negative mindset, that binge is going to happen. And I'm really big on writing things down. Writing down what you're feeling can really be like having a conversation with yourself. And if you're trying to process a lot, you're going to forget some steps that you're thinking through if you don't write them down. And if you're taking the time to step away from this binge, you are now getting ideal development. So this is a time to write down ideas. What am I feeling? What am I thinking? Am I trying to justify this? How will I feel tomorrow? And you taught me this, that when you write things down, a lot of things seem very adolescent, right? Or a lot of our fears just aren't just our fears, and they aren't really going to happen. I think I touched on a lot there, so I'll let you kind of counter punch with that.
I was like, okay, how am I going to summarize this?
Yeah, so we'll stop there for now.
A whole bunch of things, Adam, that could potentially lead to a binge urge. A negative mindset. And by that, I'm assuming that you mean a negative mood state. And I say state because that's a really important thing to remember. It's not a trait, it's a state, which means that it's fleeting, it shifts. And so on top of that, I'll add, we may experience binge urges because we're experiencing a negative mood state, but we assume it to mean that it's just the way we are and it's never going to go away. Like, we make it in our minds permanent. So the things that are going on around us too, not just what's going on in here or in here in our bodies with the emotions that we're experiencing, but the circumstances around us and within our environment. Part of what may create a very strong binge urge is this is permanent. It's not going to change. Like, it's going to be this way for a really long time. And for your clients who, too, let's go back to these postponed competitions, it's being able to come back from that and just recognize, like, no, this isn't permanent. It's temporary. Everything in life is temporary. If there's one thing we can count on, it's that everything is shifting and moving and changing, and it will continue to. Nothing is permanent except for death. And right. Maybe depending on your belief system too, death isn't even permanent.
Right. Yeah.
But so there's the mindset, there's the negative mood state, we might experience greater sense of urge to binge because we're just trying to hold too many things in our minds at one time. And that can lead to a sense of overwhelm, a sense of I can't handle this. And we can't handle that much stuff all at one time. We just can't. So to not look at that as a, like, something is wrong with me, I'm incompetent. Like, our competence is relative based on the circumstances, based on the situation, based on all of the inputs that we have coming at us. And so like you told everyone, writing things down can be a really positive measure to take to decide too, what is it that I even need to be paying attention to right now? Like, I've got all of these inputs coming in and I'm perceiving them as all important, but maybe I can prioritize the top one or two things instead and put everything else to the side. Let it go. They may be important, but they may not be, top importance level, priority level sorts of actions. What else did you list, Adam?
I like what you said there, because the writing of those things down can be like unloading that RAM, so then you don't hit that overload. And
writing itself in general is a very, very effective way of processing what your experience is. So yes, there's writing your to-do list, but then there's writing to have a time for contemplation and reflection, whether it's in the front end of the day or the back end of the day, whether it's 5 minutes or half an hour, it doesn't necessarily matter, but to make it a regular practice allows you to see what the narrative is that you are spinning. And to write down what your experience has been, but then to really focus on putting a different spin on it. It's the spin that we give to the events that occur in our lives that typically lead to non-optimal sorts of behaviors that we engage in. So like you mentioned, the mom who has the kid tugging on her pant leg all day long, that happens. Okay, that's an event, right? And this sequence is something that you can do in a notebook, writing it down, because you want to understand yourself better and why you are responding the way you do. So there's an activating event. Kid is freaking tugging on my pants all day long. That's completely neutral. A kid tugging on pants. There's no like, this is awful. This is horrible. There's no, this is amazing. It's a kid is tugging on your pants. That's like, from an innocent bystander, that's what they see. It's an observation. Kid tugging on pants. Okay. But this is what we do as humans. We turn it into something. We give it some sort of meaning. We attribute the kid to not caring about what mom has to do. Or, we spin it. We spin a story, and then that leads us into a certain way of feeling about it. So now mom is frustrated because she's like, he doesn't understand. I have too much to do. Then she starts blaming herself because now she's being a bad mom, and it's shaming, and now she feels regret for feeling that way too. It's just like compounded. So then she feels overwhelmed and out of control. And now she's like, how do I get out of this? And now her face is in the food.
Right.
So in writing it down, it's like, what we can do is notice the activating event. Notice the thoughts that we're having around it. Write them down. What are all the thoughts you're having about it? And typically what we'll find is that they're incredibly distorted. It's like we're looking into a funhouse mirror.
Oh yeah.
And it's all wacky. And you mentioned like black and white sort of thinking, all or nothing sort of thinking that we're doing. We personalize things. We hear all of these shoulds. I should be a better mom. I should be able to do this. Lots of shoulds. We make feelings facts too. And that sounds like, oh my God, I feel so incompetent. I must be incompetent. We jump to these massive conclusions. Like, you just took a big freaking leap there. These are very, very common they're called cognitive distortions in our thinking, errors in our thinking. And to write them down and see like that they're actually occurring. And then the next step would be to reframe it.
Yeah.
Choose a different sentence.
You brought up an amazing kind of thought that I get is a lot of my clients think I'm going to be disappointed in them. And you know, how often have you ever seen me disappointed in one of my clients? And it's only maybe that they think I would be disappointed in them disappoints me. But it's just, it's not a realistic thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know maybe what they did might help them get closer to their goal, but I understand that this is hard. And if this were easy, they would not hire me to do this.
Right.
So I'm here to actually, them messing up gives me more purpose and makes me feel important. So I'm not disappointed. I'm here to help you.
You're doing a lot there, and you're bringing up a very good point, because for a lot of individuals who I work with, they come to me because they're binge eating. What we see is this incredible level of just shame and disappointment in themselves for thinking that they aren't measuring up to these external expectations. You're an external to your clients, Adam. And if they're going into all of these situations, and okay, you know what? I want to say this, it's normal, it's natural, especially with people whom we respect and admire, to worry about being judged or worry about disappointing them. However, it is of no help to us when we shame ourselves and look at ourselves as deficient, and look at ourselves as incompetent when we make a mistake and don't feel like we have the integrity or accept ourselves enough to share with that person what just occurred. Does that make sense? It's
Absolutely.
like we have to, let me back up a little bit. One of the things that I see my clients really that moves them closer to a binge is, and creates binge urges, is a very large lack of self-acceptance. And this, I feel like, goes hand in hand with that fear of disappointing someone or fear of being judged by someone, because we are essentially giving away our own integrity.
Yeah.
Giving away our own sense of confidence to like illuminate you or me, like we are somehow the gurus that have everything together, and yes, you must bow down to me and understand that you just made a massive mistake that you must atone for. It's like, no, please, no. I am an equal. I am your equal. I make as many, if not more, mistakes and mess up than you do. We're in this together.
Right.
The thing that's missing is that, like, I have committed to not viewing myself as an adversary. That's self-acceptance. This commitment to not viewing myself as an adversary. And if we're not there yet, if we're not working on this love of myself and acceptance of myself and my weaknesses and flaws and my inequities, but also my strengths and my resources and my capacities, like I am all of that. We have to be working on that, or we are going to be swept away by binge urges, because I look at it as an urge as a thought.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
We are going to spin those stories, because if we haven't committed to not being an adversary, and if we haven't committed to loving ourselves, and if we haven't committed to acknowledging that, you know, perfection doesn't exist, that's not the name of the game here, then the thoughts are going to be around, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, I've disappointed this person, I'm going to do what it takes to not be judged, and in the process, like, let go of my own personal integrity. So yeah. And, you know, that leads into another area that one reason we experience binge urges is because we have these very, like, I was going to say short-sighted, unreflective, internalized beliefs about how things need to or should be, how we should or shouldn't look, what we should or shouldn't weigh, how we should or shouldn't speak.
Mm-hmm.
And I've even noticed this, Adam, I feel like I'm talking nonstop, but one thought is like leading to another.
Oh, yeah.
I'll give you the floor here in a second. As a female, and this is in no way a female issue. We just had a conversation about men and them needing to be in community with each other so they can learn to be vulnerable. Like, but here's the thing that will create more binge urges is this belief that, like, this is what society tells us is like, I have to maintain a certain level of youth. Like, my hair can't go gray and I can't have wrinkles. And you see it, like, people are getting Botox more than ever. People are getting surgeries more than ever to try to maintain a level of youth. You know, that's a woman thing. That's a female thing. The thing for men, because I work with men who are binge eating too, it's, you need to maintain this air of masculinity. You cannot share your feelings. You cannot be vulnerable. You know, most men were grown up with that. Here is what's okay for you to be and for what you to do, what you need to do as a man. Mm-hmm. And when we attempt to live in accordance with those messages and those ideas and those beliefs that are not even true, then it's like our integrity is going to, like, dig at us and dig and dig and dig and create a real discomfort that we're going to try to shove down and get away from because it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. I also have to add to that, as somebody who is a contest prep coach and focuses so much on how people look, if you would ask me about a lot of my past clients, I could say, yes, that person had a wonderful physique, and that might pop up in conversation, but more of the conversation is going to be, that person was a great person, that person, you know, did this, this, and this, and the physique side of that pie is so small when that was our entire focus of our work together, was doing that. But a lot of the other things ring a bell in my memory versus just the physique side. And I think that's important for any of my listeners to hear, because, I mean, here I am bringing some of the best physiques to pro stages, amateur stages, but my connection and my conversations with the clients and just our relationship mattered more to me than their physique. Great example, one of my clients I've hired for like 2 years now, every year on her anniversary, she posts her proposal video. I'll remember that my entire life as a coach because it's so cute. He had a seal swim up with a buoy that said, "Will you marry me?" And I watch it. This is the second year it's happened. I watch it every year. It puts a smile on my face. And she has an incredible physique, but I'm more than likely to probably talk about her engagement versus really spending a lot of time talking about her physique.
It's special, Adam, and it's unique, and it's extraordinary because you are the exception. To have a coach who wants to know you as a person, like, you want your clients to be themselves in your relationship. You don't want them to be automatons. You don't want them to just do what you tell them to do. You want them to take it in. You want them to reflect on it. You want them to understand it. And then you want to have a conversation about it. Now, of course, as a physique competitor, like, if you're going to go on stage in 5 minutes, they send you a picture and you're like, okay, you need water stat or like eat something salty now. Like
Yeah.
they're going to do that. But we're on the broad scale, like this sense of belonging that they're experiencing with you puts them in the position to learn how to care for themselves, because you're being a model for them about how to turn inward, how to turn towards themselves instead of turn away. And you're always asking them to, like, okay, go look in the mirror, like metaphorically and practically, but look in the mirror, like look inside. What's important to you? Share with me who you are, not just what you look like and how you are, but who are you? I want to know you as a human. Mm-hmm.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's that may be one of the largest sort of predictors of binge eating is low self-concept. And if we look at what a concept is, Adam, it's a set of ideas that when combined kind of help to explain a phenomenon, right? So the self, what is the self? A collection of experiences and ideas and emotions and beliefs and attributions and desires and motivations and goals and relationships. But I think if we were to break that down into kind of more understandable parts, what we would see are a few things. We would see someone with self-esteem, and when we look at the definition of self-esteem, it's kind of similar to self-acceptance, but it's this honest and realistic opinion of oneself.
Mm-hmm.
And that sometimes can be based on the information that comes in from other people. But what we're not doing with that information from other people is weighing our worth based upon it. Like, just foundationally, there's an unconditional sense of core worth. No matter what Adam says to me about my physique and about the changes I might need to make to my nutrition, my core worth is unscathed. I am loved, and I'm a whole and fulfilled human being no matter what he says to me. And I'm going to take what he says, seriously, because I have this goal. But it doesn't change how I feel about myself. And when I step off that stage and I feel like I did everything I could have done to bring the best package, and I don't win, I don't feel bad about who I am as a human being. If this isn't about restrictive eating and being really hungry, because that's one of the things that's going to make us have urges to binge too, Adam. Biologically, we can't get away from that. But on this fundamental sort of core worth level, if we're stepping off the stage and we don't win, and we're thinking, I'm a failure. I'm a failure. We're the fundamental attribution error right there that can lead to, the domino effect and falling headlong into binge eating. Mm-hmm.
It's really easy to think that because when you're contest dieting, you're kind of always in a fight or flight response. And when you look deeply into kind of like the hormonal adaptations that happen with competitors, a lot of times we are seeing progesterone being lower because it's a derivative of, guess what spikes when you start dieting and go through a stressful situation? Cortisol starts going through the roof. Well, you need that progesterone to create that. So when that progesterone lowers, you start getting this hormonal imbalance of progesterone to estrogen that's not normal. That changes the way you feel. It changes the way you feel affects the way you think. And this is why we do refeeds, and this is why we deload training and things like that, cut back cardio through prep at times. But this really changes somebody's psychology to a degree. And sometimes it's just really important to remind clients that you might not think as logically or as clearly through prep. I tell a lot of my clients, don't make any very big decisions in prep. Don't go through a divorce, unless it was really sour beforehand. Maybe don't make job changes, nothing real big, because a lot of these emotions are going to be much more heightened through this process. And I think that's really important to kind of bring up front as we talk about this too.
Such a great point, Adam. And I think especially you having this information and providing it to your clients on the front end so they can understand what they will potentially be dealing with later on down the road is especially important. And then throughout the process, reminding them as well. So we're getting into this, sort of highly stressful, and not because you were making it stressful, but biologically stressful sort of a place in your body right now. These are the things that you might be expecting, and these are the thoughts that you might be experiencing, and sharing with them based upon what you because I know you have clients, Adam, that you've worked with for season after season. You have seen like what they go through and what their mental struggles are and their physical struggles. And so how valuable to have a coach who can say, hey, remember last season when you had these thoughts like periodically, and then they were coming in faster and they were coming in with more force around this time, that's probably going to happen again. Let's talk about how you want to deal with that. How do we want to manage that? Because it's probably going to happen. So let's prepare.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think a big part to talk about too is like, once you start reverse dieting, that cascade of events isn't initially over. It's just like if you crammed for a college course and you stayed up 2 nights in a row studying, you need at least 2 to 4 days to catch up on that sleep. Now that's a very short time frame. So when you're talking about reverse dieting, getting your hormones back to normal, it's like a very slow dimmer switch back up. So just because you're eating more doesn't mean you're going to feel immediately better. It's going to take time to restore that progesterone and to actually you experience a very stressful event going through contest prep. So your body is still going to produce cortisol in almost a delay to deal with what you were dealing with for the past, 5 or 6 months, depending on how long you were dieting, even in some of the best prep scenarios.
Mm-hmm. I remember walking through the streets of New York City after World Championships in 2011 and just crying because I was physically uncomfortable. I just felt so hungry. This was post-show, and I was starting to reverse the diet. I was more uncomfortable reverse dieting than I was dieting. And part of it is mental, because you're there. What you have to reestablish what your goal is and what your purpose is. And if the show ends and you haven't necessarily worked through that, like, and you don't have a purpose and you don't have a target, and you haven't thought through what are the behaviors that are most important to me and what could get away, what could get in the way of these behaviors, and how do I want to structure my environment? Like, that's all post show work.
Mm-hmm.
Because post show, it is really, you're exhausted physically and emotionally and mentally. Like, you're exhausted. And I just remember I felt completely depleted, even though I was eating more food than I've ever eaten in my entire life. Because my food levels had come up the 2 weeks before the contest. I've never eaten more food than that in my entire life, but I still just felt completely wasted and drained. And there were plenty of those, you should go eat that. You should go eat that.
Yeah.
Eat that. It's everywhere. You can go eat that. Like, just constant. And I needed my support system around me. And to continually be reminding myself that this is normal, not comfortable.
You brought up a great point that I wanted to touch on. You said pre-planning the exit strategy, especially when you're a state where you're just thinking more clearly. It's almost like writing a letter to yourself before you become adolescent. And if you can go back and say, well, here was a time period where I wasn't as deep in prep, I was thinking more clearly, and this is more who I really am. And you can go back and look at that. That's so powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we did do this as humans, whether we're in contest prep or not. We end up in situations where, and we can say this to ourselves. We're like, yeah, I've been in situations like that before, and here's how I typically act. Well, don't just let it sit there. Like, how do you want it to go down? What would be ideal for you? What's your dream for moving through? What's your aspiration for moving through this situation differently? Let's start visualizing that. We have these powerful strategies that we can begin using throughout our prep. Visualization, I mean, I keep mentioning that, but it's powerful. Our brains don't know the difference, our minds don't know the difference between real or imagined. It's like, right. Let's take advantage of that for sure. Now, I say this, and it doesn't mean that it doesn't make things comfortable all the time. It doesn't mean we're going to fly through every situation with ease. And again, if we're going into the situation thinking that this needs to be easy. And I guess on the flip side too, I've had clients who are like, if it's not hard, I'm not doing it right.
Yes.
Either way, like, we're getting in our own way when we're just landing on that very sort of all or nothing belief. And when things kind of fly in the face of the belief, that's when we get uncomfortable and we might experience the urge to binge, because it's not meeting it's not a coherent worldview or belief that, we're landing on. But when something flies in the face of it, it's like, it kind of makes us stop. It makes us cringe. It makes us tighten up and get tense. And part of being able to manage the urges to binge is to be able to kind of stand in the tension and be like, there's nothing inherently wrong with me right now. Like, okay, let's flip the switch. What's true and real right now? And what action do I want to take that's in my integrity, that's aligned with my goal? Like, how can I be responsible in this moment and accepting of who I am? How can I be conscious and deliberate? Like you said, that all is a little compromised in certain places in prep. But that's why we have people in our corner who we need to be able to be real with, who can say, look, okay, here's what I see. Here's what I'm not seeing. and maybe we should go in this direction.
That's awesome. I love that. I try to tell my clients that, all these feelings actually are a beautiful thing. We would not be here today had we not had a lot of these feelings. But, prehistorically, if you felt these things, it was, well, now I have to build a basin to catch fish and put energy into that. Where our lives are so simple, I walk to the fridge and I fix this. And if you watch a episode of Naked and Afraid or two, you will become watching one of the best social experiments with people and the psyche of dieting and food when you see those people with very low rations trying to survive in a very stressful situation. And it's actually neat to watch people go through that because it can kind of help you check yourself with how much we have and kind of put it into perspective.
Living from a place of abundance as opposed to scarcity. Yeah. Trying to protect ourselves so much and create these, perfect utopian environments where we don't experience any pain or hardship. I think a lot of us are trying to get to that place, and good luck.
Yes. I actually, through quarantine, I've gotten really into chopping wood to heat my house because it just seems free. And so it's peaceful to do. I actually do enjoy it. But something about it is so empowering to say, no matter how bad things got, I have this wonderful acreage and I can actually keep my home. And it's so cool to feel that. It's definitely different.
I'll say this, Adam, and maybe this is a good note to end on for today. I see a lot of people who struggle with binge eating, and I really don't want this to come off the wrong way. They are operating from a victim sort of mentality, and it's incredibly self-defeating and shaming, and that maybe the core idea is I can't. And we all grew up in different ways, and our caregivers shaped us in many different ways, and I won't deny the impact of trauma on so many individuals. But I do understand that in order to take care of ourselves and be able to change our behavior in a real meaningful way that helps us to find or rediscover, I'll say rediscover, because our core worth has always been in here. It was there when we were born. It didn't go anywhere. It was just covered up with a bunch of crap from culture and from other people and their expectations and things that they said we should or shouldn't do. But we have to learn how to move away from the victim mentality and rediscover our worth again, that we do have the capacity. That does not mean that when we do that, people won't hurt, people won't be disappointed, that we won't be judged when we stand up for ourselves and say, actually, that's not the best decision for me. Or, no, actually, this is what's important to me. Or, no, actually, this is the direction I'm going to take. And I can think of so many examples in my own life, Adam, where, God, it was freaking brutal to say to certain people what I had chosen to do, knowing that they weren't going to approve. And I was like, I'm the one that has to live with myself. Me. No one else lives in here. And me me being the victim and saying that I can't or I won't because of X, Y, and Z, mainly all of these outer expectations of others or whatever, wasn't going to get me to where I wanted to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I do see a lot of that, and I do think that that was a very well said, because it's a really easy mentality to fall into. There's so many things out of our control right now, but the ball still really is in our court to control. And I truly believe in the meme that life is 100% of how you react to things versus what happens to you. And that is so true. I've seen more divorce within my camp than I've ever seen, more breakups. And I've told all of my clients, if this has happened to you, you've probably heard me say this. I say that even though that this is such a difficult time, I can promise you that when you get through this, you will look back on this bad time and realize, had this store not closed, you wouldn't have been able to get such another great gift somewhere else in your life along the line. So you eventually will be glad that the bad happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, finding the meaning in it. Yeah, even if we would never wish it upon another person, even if we can say, like, I wish I hadn't had to go through that pain, and here is the meaning of it and what I understand about myself as a result of it, that's powerful. Yeah,
Absolutely. This was amazing. Really good podcast today.
yeah, thank you, Adam.
Thank you guys for joining us, and we will see you next time on Contest Prep University.
Thanks, guys.